West Neck Water District meeting. Third quarter, second quarter, perhaps. I don't know, I'm kind of mixed up on the quarters. The first item on our agenda are the minutes, which I drew up. And have you had a chance to look through them?
I had a question, and I just don't understand it. On page 1, in that, towards the 3 lines up at the end of that first paragraph, it says the casings of the well can be shaken and moved currently.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well,
If that's what you intended, then that's, don't worry about it, but.
Joe mentioned that the wells that we have currently, numbers 5 and 6, it was a very poor insertion of the casings, which I guess go down, and probably Joe Fenora can explain this better. But he said that when they went to check them, either check them out or remove them, they were very unstable.
Got it, okay.
Is that correct?
That's right.
All right, that explains that. And
Which
then
would mean that they weren't properly cemented in.
understood. Now I understand what that is. On page 2, there's at number 4, the line that begins with Lori Beard Raymond stated that district footprint contained new properties on DEC permit that then what? I think that's previously, not preciously.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, this is why I don't like to do the minutes.
Oh, I totally understand.
I don't have anybody going over them. Everything else. It's good.
It's not at this meeting, so I don't know if I can vote to approve the minutes because I wasn't there. Just,
Pretty much.
they're informative.
You can technically.
Yeah.
I've heard, yeah, it always feels weird to vote on something that you have no idea what they said, but I've heard that you can too. In which case, I think I understood the rest.
Okay. Make a motion to approve. Second. Okay. The next up on our meeting is Joe Picorni, who is
Not on yet.
not on there yet, so we'll wait for him. I guess what we could do, we could skip down to number 10, the year-to-date financials. And he's waiting. Joe Picorni said he's waiting. Is he in the waiting room?
No, he's waiting.
That's what he says.
Maybe invite him again.
Re-invite him.
Probably has an old link.
Inviting you. So right now in our bank account, we have $2,999. That's in our accessible bank account for all expenditures, and the only expenditure we have is for the clerk. And we didn't have a clerk last month, so it's remained pretty stable for the last 3 months. In the class account, which is what we're going to use to pay our first surcharge, annual surcharge to Suffolk County Water Authority, we have $163,648, which, because we have been allowed, or because we haven't removed anything for 2 years, we've accumulated a good amount of interest. Because I think originally when we signed the contract, it was, I believe, somewhere around 158. So it's a good thing that we can let it sit there and accumulate interest for a while. And that's the status of our financials. We will get an annual report of amortized capital improvement expenditures, which is due in July, which is our contract date with SQA. We will get that, and our next meeting, which I believe is in August, we'll go over the year-to-date, which ends the end of May.
Okay.
That's just the way it sort of circulated and cycled.
At the end of May.
The end of this May 24. And when we get that from Suffolk County Water Authority, Amber will look it over and we'll check out the expenses and where we are as far as paying off our surcharge.
What is the surcharge?
Well, it was 1.7 million.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. So
Now with,
163 won't cover it. that's
no,
what
it
you're-
will not. I don't think so. No, we forecasted that it would cover a good percentage for about 3 to 5 years, depending on
It's
what.
per year then, the total is 1.7.
Yes.
Right, okay,
It's for
good.
25 years.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it was 1.7, but then there was the $500,000 grant, so it takes it down to 1.2.
okay.
So yeah, that's our annual report.
I have a question about the financials. Will the annual surcharge be recast, given the grant, and the annual payment be reduced? Or
It's a good
will we
question.
take these off the end, because we would be able to reconsider a rate reduction possibly if the total surcharge is recast?
That's an open item that we're supposed to talk to their finance people. Joe's not on yet, but, excuse me, but when we spoke last, we thought that it might come off to be able to do a payment restructuring.
Oh, right,
The decision, at least for last year, was not to reduce the rates yet.
because they hadn't received the money yet, right? Yeah. That could be very attractive for the customer base.
Oh, yeah.
Joe says that he's trying to get in, but it's not working, waiting for the host to start the meeting.
Okay, just send him the link, so let me call him because
Yeah, you'll have to, I don't have the link here on my text to send.
I just sent it to him. I emailed him the link, so let me just see what he's doing.
I mean, I can call him.
I got it, thanks.
And I was gonna, I didn't need to be excused because I think there was confusion about huh?
No, she's talking.
She's talking to Joe.
The link, you have.
The 3rd and the 10th,
I'm sorry?
the dates of this meeting. It
Yes.
says that I'm excused, but I didn't excuse.
It means you had an excused absence
What
Excused absence, yeah.
number is it?
Were you at the meeting?
instead of an unexcused absence.
Yes, no, I wasn't on the
What has
3rd.
the number on it?
Nobody was here on the 3rd, though, were we?
I know, but originally that was gonna be the date. It was confusing, something was sent out to me, that I don't know what that was. Thanks, but
You were on Zoom for the last meeting.
was I?
Yes,
I can't
February
remember
2nd.
what day-
You
Oh,
came-
that's
you
right, that's
came
right.
in-
Well, February was the last meeting,
That's
wasn't it?
right. February was the
Oh,
last
that's
meeting.
what that was, when I was on Zoom.
And then Wendy was excused.
Oh, that, yeah, it says Zoom, Donna. And
Yes.
I zoned out and didn't know. That's my fault.
Okay, perhaps Joe, since we're waiting for Joe Picorni, could we go to item number 6?
Sure.
So we had asked Joe Fenora, and I had been up to the well site, and we had asked Kenny Lewis, who's now the superintendent of highways, if he would set up a date with Goat Hill Management, so we could talk about what chemicals were being applied to the golf course, just so we had an idea of what gets sprayed. Now, Joe Picorni, and well, actually, when we do testing of the water, they can tell by the constituents in the water if there's anything that's migrating into the wells from types of pesticide residue or, byproducts. And there has never been any indication that there was anything in the well water, even though the T, which is very close to the wells, probably good 50 feet, and then the greens are, I don't know, maybe 80 feet from the well. So that was a good indication that we weren't receiving any kind of pesticide residue or breakdown of components. But we thought it would be a good idea just to find out what is being applied so close to our well water. So I'll hand it over to Joe Fenora,
Yes.
the results of the meeting.
We met with representatives from the golf course,
Yes.
And we're sort of taking a twofold approach. One, to have a better working relationship with the golf course in terms of their applications and turf management, but also because these new wells are going in, and this is an opportunity to perhaps provide landscaping and or physical barriers around our new wells to ensure a higher level of protection. The loose casings that we had described just a few moments ago for the old wells, that represents a contamination risk because there's a gap between the well and the soil. And so in a runoff situation or spill, liquids could potentially seep through the hole that exists between the casing and the soil. So typically those casings are grouted and sealed in place such that there's no way for liquids to enter the well, certainly unwelcomed. The new well locations are fairly close to the old well locations, but in picking their specific spot, those are the types of considerations we're making, that runoff is not naturally sheeting in that direction, that applications or work being done on the golf course wouldn't interfere with these wells, that they're not prone to being struck by a golf cart or by a vehicle. And so golf course agreed that we would be looking to put in some screening and protection, physical barriers around the new wells. They thought that was a wise idea, and Suffolk Waters offered to assist with that, both from an installation and cost perspective. And we also met with them to discuss their treatment schedule. They're going to share their program, since it's all documented, schedule in terms of timing and chemical applications with us. So we can perhaps have a discussion with either the lab or some public health sanitarians at Suffolk Water about, hey, what are they using? What are the risks here? And we can keep a dialogue going. At this point, we have no reason to be concerned. This is all proactive engagement to understand what activities are going on there and how we can, perhaps make this safer now that we've made big investments in new wells and a longer term commitment to being on the golf course.
Do they indicate that they use, I'll use this word loosely, benevolent agents on the, or
The
are they
representative,
standard types of applications?
they're all standard. They're all approved components by the EPA and or state, and the applicator also maintains a license for that type of work. They did share with us that it's only the greens that receive treatment, so that's quite restrictive by way of golf courses. Usually, it's all over on a given golf course. It could be fairways and tees, and so the total area is relatively small with respect to the size of the course. But nonetheless, they're going to send over all of that information about what's being applied, and perhaps we can reference some of our previous water tests, and just more information is better here. So these are very good conversations to have. It's part of a part of this new investment in new wells at Goat Hill.
Right, dialogue.
What do they cover again, those wells, 5 and 6? What they're doing in Gardner, across the street?
Well, we're gonna, if Joe ever comes on,
He's on.
he's gonna update us on the progress of
Okay,
the well installation. So,
so he's on.
good morning, afternoon. Hello, Joe.
Good afternoon. It's good to finally be in. Took a few attempts.
Okay, well, today, as you can see from the agenda that you received, the first item in your report is the status of the well installation. Both Joe Fenora and myself have been up on the golf course having conversations with Scott.
Yeah, maybe you want to update me on it because I understand you guys are there quite often. So, things are going pretty well. It's a little rocky in the beginning, finding a good spot. But number 5 or 5A now is completed. That well is completed. And we've sampled it, and we've done the complete suite of water quality samples on it. and I'm happy to report that the water quality is excellent. Yeah, it looks very, very good. So I'm very pleased with that one. They're all set up to drill the second well, that's 6A. And they're going to start that on Monday. The rig apparently is all set up, ready to go. The surface casing is in already. And that is supposedly, should be done by the end of the week. It should be relatively quick. So I mean, it's things are going a little slower than I would have hoped.
Yeah.
But the good news is that we've got one good well. And I think given the fact that we got one good well, we have a good chance of having two good wells.
The current 5 and 6 are not being retired until after the completion of both 5A and 6A, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay,
What do they cover again? Which locations?
everything,
Everything.
everything.
Oh, okay.
Do you have anything you want to add to this, Joe, in your conversations with Scott? I mean,
No, not particularly. I mean, we
Okay.
struggled with the first, I say we,
well,
Brian Schleicher from Peconic Well. Yeah.
Yes, but so far, I would say all those involved have been easy to work with. They're easy to communicate with. So I think this is progressing, quite well.
Yeah. And
I think my only question would be the distance of 5A from 6A.
Mhm.
Is it a good distance? I think they said 30 feet or something.
It's not as far as I think everybody had hoped, but it's more than the distance that we have between 5 and 6 now. So it's an improvement in that regard. But, there's concessions to be made elsewhere. If we wanted to expand the distance, we would have been closer to the road, or we would have been further from the support services, electric and plumbing. So all things considered, I think this was the best compromise that we could have.
I
So
agree.
long as it ultimately, produces, but it seems like we're on track.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first well, they pumped it at 100 gallons a minute and seems to produce plenty of water. So that's good. We'll probably start with a smaller pump, probably like a 50 gallon a minute pump, so that we can kind of observe the water quality as we start using the well. And we'll do the same thing with number 6A when that goes into service. And if that all continues to pan out, the water quality seems to hold, and we don't have any issues with the well, we can upgrade the pumps to the hundreds that the wells are rated for. So we're just very conservative when it comes to this type of thing. We don't, the aquifer out here is much more fragile than it is in other parts of the island. So we just want to make sure that we're very careful. We don't want to mess anything up, so to speak. But like Joe said, the good news is that we've done the road crossing. So the piping is across the street. The piping is back to the pump station. The electric work is progressing nicely at the pump station. We're upgrading the electric service to a 3-phase electric service. And I think you may remember me saying that all the electric is going to now emanate out of the chemical and control building across the street. And when this is all said and done, we will have total flexibility to run, if we want to, run all 3 pumps simultaneously, which we could never do before. So we'll have significantly more capacity out of this system when we're all said and done than we have now. And we will have complete flexibility with operating the system from our remote location. I think I told you that, if in the middle of the night, well number 5 had failed, we would have to send somebody out there to throw a manual switch so that we could run number 6. When this is all said and done, if something goes wrong with one of those wells, we'll just push a button and we'll shift over from our Bayshore office to the other well. So it's going to, it'll look like all the rest of our pump stations, in that it'll be very flexible and able to respond to any kind of disturbances that could occur.
Great.
Yep.
And at what point can we entertain the idea of hooking up other customers and expanding the district?
We were going to ask that.
Only 'cause
let's
people ask us.
Yeah, sure. So let's get let's get the work done. And I'm very optimistic that we're gonna have these wells in service for the summer and the peak when that comes along. And if we feel, as soon as we feel comfortable, Lisa, and that could be during the summer, that may be, sooner than later, but it's in the near distant future where we can entertain that. And then I think we need to coordinate together on how you want to accomplish that.
Exactly.
Yeah, because, again, that's something that we vowed to work with you on, and we are going to do that. So that I think once we're comfortable with it, we can come back to you and have that conversation about, who and where you want to extend or, make additional taps for additional customers.
And I think that's a conversation that the district needs to have with the town as regarding where the application is made to. It's always made to the West Neck Water District. Will it then go to Suffolk County Water Authority? Should it still remain in the district who had, where we have oversight? I think that's a conversation maybe we need to talk about. Just
Yeah, we have to
throwing
go
it
back
out
to the
there for us to
contract, too.
think about it.
Yeah, we have to go back to the contract too. Because I
Yep.
feel like we made sure that the town retained control for any expansion to the district.
Yeah.
Although I think, isn't it 1 or 2 residents already within the footprint of the district?
I think there are, yes.
Well, I just, what do you mean, 1 or 2?
1 or 2 residents are within the footprint that want to be hooked in, or maybe they're.
Well,
across
the
street.
resident that made the latest application is not in the footprint per se, because they're on the other side of the road. So,
Will this switch over when it happens? Will customers be notified? Is there any difference from our perspective that we should be looking for?
About the new
No.
wells.
Yeah. Now, it should be seamless. We'll do that very carefully. We'll switch them over gradually. We have to take a close look at how that gets done, but we're setting this all up so that there's a separate electric feed, like I said, coming from the well house, up from the control building. And at that time, the electric will still be energized out on the golf course, but at some point that electric feed on the golf course will be demolished and removed because we won't need that anymore.
well, the good thing is this year we have good precipitation and all our wells are deep.
Yeah, it's been a good kind of a normal spring right now. That's what I would call it. Maybe it's a little wetter than normal, but it's, I think it's more normal than anything.
Any questions?
No.
The next thing on the agenda, Joe, was water filtration systems. Given the difficulty that Donna experienced with the water filtration system in her house, is there anything that we can do to remind homeowners? Is there anything that the Water Authority does to remind homeowners about filtration maintenance?
Yeah, and I, of course,
Now that you're an expert at this.
I'm an expert at it. Originally, prior to you coming into our lives, we had issues and then they sort of, when you came in, everything sort of maxed even, Steven, and then we don't know what, a part of it was our fault because we bought, 6 water filtration that you're supposed to change them every 3 months. And kind of 3 months turned into 4 months, and I don't know that. But when the work was going on, and we think this because remember there were people who had short issues,
Yes,
and then when at the golf course. But now it's sort of balanced out. We still have very little run on our sinks in our cold water, but now everything is normal.
Your pressure is normal.
My pressure is normal, the hot water pressure is good, everything is good. But I guess the big question comes up is why do we now need filtration? Because the understanding was that when Suffolk came along, that the water was going to be clean and the pressure and everything was going to be okay that this happened again? There's $60 each one of these filters that you, in order to
Well,
have
these are
them.
things that homeowners choose to buy on their own,
Yeah.
correct?
But in my particular situation, that's the thing that fixed the issues
Yeah,
we
no,
were
I understand. I
having.
just wasn't sure if this was
Yes,
something.
and I'm wondering if we still
district-wise.
need them.
Oh,
Well,
Um,
if you ask me, Donna, you don't need them.
Okay,
I mean, the water is very good quality water that you were getting out there. And so, my suggestion would be for you to bypass the filter and see if that's okay with you. Now, a lot of people have water filters in their homes because they don't like the taste of chlorine.
Right.
And I understand that. And I have no choice but to add chlorine. It's required, as you know, by the
Right.
Department of Health. So, if you're looking to remove chlorine, there's no need to have like a whole house filter for that, where you're filtering all the water in the house and then, the water in your upstairs bathroom doesn't come out fast enough or whatnot. To me, you're better off. You either have a filter on your refrigerator where you get your water out of, right? There's usually most refrigerators have carbon
well, we
filters
don't
on them.
use that on our refrigerator.
Yep. So
We
you
a
have
nice
that.
filter.
And the carbon filter in a refrigerator does a great job of taking chlorine out. And so does a Brita pitcher, so if that was something you were concerned about, you could use that also. But to have a whole house filter, I just don't see the need for it.
Definitely, when we changed it out, it was full of stuff.
Yeah.
And-
So look, I
And we
mean,
had thought maybe there's more of something that's because now, at the same time, you guys were, putting all the different work into things that weren't there before, like the meters.
yeah.
And maybe it kind of backed up because of that.
Yeah,
and
there were a
wasn't-
number of disturbances. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right now,
I
I
think-
don't know.
I think when we had the issue with your filter, I think it was precipitated by, I think we rotated pumps or something, and they operated a little differently and maybe kicked up a little sediment of some kind. I forget what it was. I had spoken to Thor several times about it. I don't think we ever really came to a definitive answer. But when again, those filters, if they're in there long enough, I don't care where it is, they're going to pick up sediment and they're going to clog up. And even in locations with the best water quality, there's always a little sediment of some kind. We inject soda ash at the pump station. If there's a little undissolved soda ash in the water, that may tend to accumulate in people's homes if they have a filter. So again, I tell people all the time, I don't have a filter in my house. I have one on my refrigerator. It came with that, and it's great for chlorine, but it really is not necessary.
I also use the filter on my refrigerator to drink from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you
Thing
can
from the faucet.
you should you can test it, Donna. You can bypass it and just run without it and just see what you think about the water quality.
Okay.
And if you feel that it's not acceptable for you, you could go back to it. But like I said, there's no reason why you need a filter.
Okay,
There's no reason. The water that you're getting, it all meets and surpasses New York State's drinking water standards.
That may be a good segue I'm going to jump down to 9 on the agenda.
Yeah.
And that is, now that the federal government has lowered the PFAS and the PFOA threshold to 2 parts per trillion.
4 points. 4 parts.
Oh, is it 4 parts?
Yep.
Forgive me. Then I guess maybe I'm being premature, but at some point, we're probably going to have filtration at the well site in order to comply. We have 3 years to comply, correct?
Right. That's absolutely correct. So it's interesting because, again, I've always been suspicious of wells 5 and 6. Right. I think I told you that, if you went up to those wells and you grabbed the top of the casings, you could actually move them around.
Yeah, we
Uh,
talked about that, right?
right? They're
Yeah.
not grouted. They're not grouted wells, which means there's no cement insulated. There's no solid. They didn't put cement around the outside of the casings when they
Right.
built those wells. The new wells that we just built, they will be fully grouted. They're cemented in, and they're less likely. They're very much less likely to have anything from the surface make their way into the well. The wells that we have there, 5 and 6, they're more susceptible to that. Those wells do both show perfluorinated compounds in them.
Mm-hmm.
I could send you the report, but I have actually like our history on the perfluorinated sampling on them. And the New York State standard right now is 10 parts per trillion, and it's going to go down to 4 once the EPA regulation goes into effect. So right now the wells are compliant with the New York State drinking water standard,
Right.
but they're close to half the standard.
I
And
think
if
one reading we saw was 7 points.
yeah, there's
I
one
think
that went
well
to
number
7.
6.
Yeah, the most recent sample of that one is back down to like 2 or 3. But either way, it's moving around, and it's detected that in those wells. The new well, and it's early because the well hasn't been in service and pumped very hard. But the test pumping that we did when we developed the new well and the water quality sampling that we've done on it shows that there's nothing in it. There are no perfluorinateds in it. Now, is that going to hold? That's the $1 million question. It's close to the existing well, and it's at a similar depth. So it should be pulling the same water that the other well is seeing. But for some reason right now, it's not showing that. So I regard that as good news, because it's possible that a grouted well in that same location is not going to be affected by perfluorinateds, which may be at the surface and may be making their way down again through the old wells, but not so much through the new wells. Because like I said, we're non-detect on all the perfluorinated compounds for well 5A.
That's good news.
Yeah, it is good news.
There
So
was also
again, pumping will tell what happens.
There was also suspicion that the PFAs came from the actual structure, the infrastructure itself, the plastics.
Well, you know what? Those wells were constructed a while ago. And as you know, there could be some Teflon tape in there somewhere.
Yeah.
The construction of the pump, or, we suspected at one time that the sample taps were contributing to it, but we replaced all the sample taps. We removed any Teflon tape, and we use the same sample tap for both wells, and we get different results from each well. So it's most likely not in the sample taps. But could it be somewhere in the well construction? Absolutely. So all I can say right now is we'll see. If by chance we do detect it, and if we have appreciable levels of perfluorinateds in there, then the water authority will put a filter in. We're putting those filters in all across the island, and we actually, we're watching it because we're already planning for it. Actually, my engineers were out there just yesterday, I think it was, and they were looking at the site for how we would retrofit filters if they're necessary. So we're already, kind of planning for it.
I have another question that I think that could be informative for all of us, and that is, when you take these samples, you take them at the site of the well, at the
Right.
tap, where it's untreated, what we call raw water, correct?
Yeah, head of pump raw water, correct.
Do you do any sampling and even though we don't have any kind of GAS filtration, do you ever do any sampling from the pump house treated water for fluorinated?
Sure. So those are called treated samples. So
And is there ever a difference?
For something like perfluorinateds, there's not going to be a difference. It's pretty typical, the same. I mean, I could get you that data if you'd like to see it, but there's no filtration, at the well field at all. So there's no reason to expect that, having perfluorinateds across the street they're going to suddenly disappear when they get to the well house.
Mhm.
So if they're in the raw water, they're going to wind up in the treated water unless there's a filter,
Right.
and there's no filter right now.
And so would the filter be at the well site or would it be in the house?
No, the filter would be across the street at the Chem building.
Okay.
Yep. And they're small capacity wells, so there'll be small filters. Most of the filters that we have are very large, 12-foot diameter vessels, but because of the size of these wells, they'd be smaller vessels. Yeah, they'll be relatively unseen. Although we'll have to house them in something, so we have to plan for a little building extension of some kind to support them.
Okay. Questions, anybody? All right, Joe, we're gonna unless you want to elaborate at all on that. The next item was low-income household water assistance program. I don't know if, we did mention that. And it was a couple of years ago that there might have been some information that went out to the customers. I don't know if that's something that you supply to the billing, through the billings, on the billings. But I thought it might be a good time to remind customers that if they're eligible, that is something they can receive.
Well, unfortunately, that LIWAC program has expired,
Okay.
right? That was funded by the federal government through the state. And we are lobbying right now, the whole industry is lobbying to have that program reinstated in the federal budget. I'm not sure what the status of that is right now, but by all assessments from the water industry, that program was very successful. And I know it was very successful for us because we made use of it. We still have tremendous receivables that go back to COVID, but it did help quite a few families pay their water bills during COVID and after it. So the talk now is to have the LIHEAP program, the latest that we've heard, because there's a similar program for heating oil and heating assistance. And there's talk about taking a portion of that money and dedicating it to the LIWAP program to allow it to continue. But that apparently is all the subject of, Congress and the budget process.
I'm sorry, is that a federal allocation or state?
Yes. Yep. It's federal money that flows down through the states.
So currently, just to be clear, there is no relief for homeowners under a certain threshold for water bills.
I can confirm for you, but I believe as of the first of the year, the LIWAP program is over.
I think that the number 11 on our agenda, which was the annual report of amortized capital improvement expenditures, which you sent to us last summer, and it was for the cycle ending in May, the quarter ending in May.
Okay.
And that was essentially our bill for the year.
Right.
We expect that we will be seeing that again at the end of May 24.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, and so we'll, and that will be our bill once again?
Yeah, it should be the same number as it was last year.
Uh-huh.
Right. That's just the payment on the capital improvements portion of the contract. I do expect to, once this work is done, to apply to DASNY for reimbursement for the work that we did. And that, as you know, is $500,000. So when we get that check, we will, obviously I'll work with our finance department to recalculate the payment so that the next payment will be reflective of the $500,000 credit.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to bring up the question that was brought up in the meeting about this being applied.
Yeah, so it's from the sounds of it, our current surcharge is $91,661. I pulled up the spreadsheet that I use. So my estimate, and let me know if I'm misinterpreting what you just said, Joe, is our surcharge would go down to about 61,000.
That sounds about right, Amber.
But that wouldn't go into effect this July, or is there a potential it might?
Be the next, because
July
they have
25.
to.
Most likely
yes.
next, yeah, because I mean, Dasney has been very good. I wouldn't be surprised if they send us a check very quickly. But I've got to get all my paperwork in, to them, and then they've got to send us a check. So my expectation is that that's not going to happen until after July.
Question, do we want to talk? about
Oh,
that?
yeah, we can ask that question. Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Or I can.
Okay.
When we had, budgeted out the $1.7 million in, well, I guess it was a little bit more actually, but the capital expenditures, you were only anticipating putting in one well, not two. So
Correct.
is it correct to, was I understanding it correctly last meeting that second well is on Suffolk County Water Authority and it's not added to our bill?
That's correct. That's correct, Amber.
Okay.
We made
That's
a
good.
deal, and that's what the deal is. We
Thank
told you that everything else is on the Water Authority,
Mhm.
including any filters that are necessary and anything else. This is why you, right? This is one of the reasons why you joined the Water Authority, and I think you
Why we locked it in.
see the benefits of it already.
Mhm. Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah, we just wanted to
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
confirm.
You don't want to be surprised,
Mm-mm.
but you won't be.
I have one more question about the, and of course, I completely didn't write it down, so it came and it went. And it won't come back again.
You know what? I have something else while you're thinking, if you want to consider this. So we put those new meters in, those 500W Itron meters.
Yeah,
That was done. That was done shortly. I think it was around Christmas time, actually, that they did it last year. So remember, those are cellular reads, right? We don't have to send the meter read out anymore to read the meters. We can just push a button basically and get the reads. So that's going to be great because you're going to get very accurate bills. And if somebody has a leak, we're going to be able to notify you about a leak much, much earlier than the quarter. Because remember, it used to be that you had to wait 3 months to find out you had a leak. So we will know that you have a leak very, very quickly, and we'll be notifying customers when they have them. So that should be very helpful for you. But there's another side benefit, and I've already started to explore this. But we can now line up the meter reads and the consumption by customers alongside the pumpage from the wells. So we can get a much better handle on whether there are leaks in the system, right?
That's
I've
good.
never been able to do this with any of our water system. We can't do this because when you have a time delay in the reading of meters, it's very, very difficult to line up the data. And on the mainland, we're reading continuously. So there's no way for any of the meter readings to all line up. I can't say, this was the consumption for the month of January because everybody's meter readings are staggered. But here in West Neck, I can push a button and get a meter reading and then push another button a month later or a week later or a day later and get another reading and compare that total volume of water with the total volume of water we pumped. So I did that with the first meter reading. The first meter reading was done on February 28th. And I looked at that and compared that to the first 2 months of production. And while it didn't line up exactly because there's still some slop in there, but I was amazed that we were as close as we were. We had consumption of 230,000 gallons total for the first 2 months. And we pumped 260,000 gallons. So there's still a difference of 30,000 gallons. And there may be some timing issues with that, but I can
That's
start
good, though.
doing this. I can start doing this on a regular basis,
Mhm.
tracking the differential. And if something is out of whack, it may be very helpful for us. You know, as you know, at this point, we haven't had many leaks at all. We had one leak about a month and a half or 2 months ago, but since the distribution system has gone in, the number of leaks has gone down
Right, right.
precipitously. So that's good news because now we're more efficiently using water. And I'm also noticing, because I've been tracking consumption, pumpage closely on a month by month basis. And as you know, we give you that report every month. But if you looked at that data, uh, it's starting to look like the most recent data is always on the low end of the average or the low end, because we're going all the way back to 2019 with your data. We had some old data that was pre us taking over the system. But so far, for the first 4 months of this year, the consumption is all, almost the lowest it's been in any of those years from 2019 to 23.
Because we have
So
less leaks.
I think so. I mean, that would
Oh, yeah,
probably
for
be
sure.
the best assumption. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's call it less lost and unaccounted for water, whether it's
Okay.
leaks or something else.
So I think
anyway.
that the last, you may remember, the last report that we got from Suffolk County Water Authority, for Suffolk County Health Department, they come out, and they checked the chlorine and all of our chemical levels. They said there was 196,000 gallons pumped for, I believe it was February, which was interesting. Because it fluctuates so much.
It's quite high. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah,
for it right
that's
now.
right. So February was 138,000.
Okay, yeah, this comes from Michael O'Connell.
Yeah,
And,
Mike works for us. Yep.
So okay, so this was April, and it says
Yeah, 179,000, right?
179,000, right?
Yep. But like if you look at that 179,000 this year and you look last year, believe it or not, in April, it was 411,000.
Oof, whoa.
Okay. And the year
Big loss.
before that, now this is just to give you an idea how it fluctuates. In 2022, it was 184,000. And then if you go during the COVID years, 21 and 20, it was 362,000 and 235,000. And then in 2019, it was 208,000. But my point is that it's the lowest of
Yeah.
all of those 5 years of previous year's data.
Right.
And if I look at March, it's there's only 1 month in 2022 where it was lower. Otherwise, it's the lowest. And in February, there's 1 month in 2022 where it's lower. Actually, in 2019, it was pretty close. It was 125. And in 2024, again, there was only 1 month. So it's all trending lower. And
Which is
again,
great.
whether it's the wet weather or what, but in the winter, consumption is pretty similar in the winter, from one year to another.
The only
And we
aberration
are-
would have been 2020,
Yeah, 2020 is a big year.
because we did have an increase in density all over the island. So
Sure, yeah.
And we couldn't even count those numbers, really.
And then
It was
2023,
outliers.
and 2023 was a really big year for pumpage. It was the biggest year since we've been out there, the biggest year for all the records that I have. But I attribute that to the flushing and the installation of the new water main, which required a lot of flushing. So we wasted a lot of water in 2023. And in a
And we
small
have a new
system like
restaurant
this, you
online.
notice that.
Got a new restaurant,
Yeah, that's true too. Yep.
and they're open
Yep.
continually, so
Yep.
I don't know what their water consumption is, but
Yep. So anyway, so I'm just looking at it. I'm feeling, good that I think that the system is tighter than it used to be, and that, we're much more efficient. We're not wasting a lot of water.
And
So-
isn't it, I think that the DEC's recommendation is an 85% efficiency. That's what they would like water districts to shoot for.
Yeah, and we're like 92. The water authority's lost water for our whole system is usually about 8%. And that's like on the high year. Sometimes it's as low as 6%.
Hmm.
But when you're in a little system like this, a little lost water can really throw the numbers off. If you were flushing or whatnot, you're going to lose a lot of water that way. But anyway, I just wanted to just put that out there so you had an idea. We are keeping an eye on it, and we now have a new tool for keeping an even closer eye on it.
And when can customers, you had mentioned in our last meeting
Yeah,
that you are only almost at the point where customers can actually do personal reads on their meters and see
Yeah.
how their water use is going. Are we close to that yet?
yeah. I just talked to my IT department about that yesterday. I think we're within a few weeks to a month away from having that available. And we'll do a notification. I'm not sure how we're going to do it. We may send out emails to the customers that we have emails for, or letters, to let people know that they have a way to do this. It's a little awkward the way it works because it's a third party that runs the portal. It's the company that makes the meters that runs the portal. So they get kind of like directed to a website where they log in and they can observe their water consumption there. But once I have that straight as to how that's going to be done, we'll let you know, and we'll let you know how we're going to inform people about it.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? I have one more question, and this has more to do with, it has more to do with a topic that the town is discussing right now.
Mhm.
And that is irrigation. Currently in the West Neck rules and regulations, which I think that there's even a question, are they still in effect? Should they be in effect? Should we roll into the Suffolk County Water Authority rules and regulations, or do we want to keep our own? It's always a matter of enforcement, like with everything else. Because currently in our rules and regulations, we have written that no irrigation or automatic sprinkler systems are allowed other than handheld. I don't know how that measures up to Suffolk County Water Authority's irrigation restrictions, if there are any. And I know that the town is contemplating, or not contemplating, but discussing irrigation as a broader topic. So I'm just throwing that out there because you manage other districts that I would imagine have rules and regulations that are separate from SQUA's rules and regulations.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, listen, Shelter Island is a very unique environment when it comes to water. It's not the mainland, obviously, where there are vast amounts of water available for irrigation. So I would be a proponent of maintaining the irrigation restrictions that you have. I don't think that we could run a system out there if people irrigated the way they irrigate on the mainland. It would be a huge increase in demand for water. So
Is SQUA concerned about this?
Concerned where are you talking about? On Shelter Island?
No, I mean, if you're saying that water use is extravagant in other areas, does this come under your purview to be concerned about
Sure.
excessive waters? And so I know you're not an enforcement arm,
Right.
but
So we have a very, very aggressive conservation program where we really try to drive home the need to responsibly use water. And this is on the mainland primarily, and that's where we operate mostly, obviously. So we're very, very aggressive in that. The DEC has targets that they want us to hit for conservation. And we're constantly working to do that. It's mainly, water consumption is mainly a function of the weather, with irrigation being, the majority of our water sales. That's
Yeah.
what people are buying water from us during the summertime. There's probably, 2/3 of the water they use for the year is used during the summer months. And so, we're very concerned about it because it stresses our system. There are places on the South Fork where we have a tough time meeting demand for water in the summertime. So we do very, very aggressive conservation calls out there. It's not that much of an issue when you get back to the main body, but we still feel that the conservation message is important. And so we promote it. This year, I think we've really increased our spending on the conservation messaging. We're doing a lot more in the way of, information, through the internet, through Channel 12, getting information into print publications. So we've really, really stepped it up. So we're very serious about it. But like I said, on Shelter Island, it's a whole different ball game because there's such a finite resource out there that, I thought the town actually had an ordinance against automatic irrigation automatic irrigation. Am I right?
Yes,
There is,
it
right?
has to be a grandfathered system, and I don't believe there are any in West Neck Water. I'd have to look at the list. I don't think so.
Mm, when we talk grandfathered, how long are we going back?
Back to like when Jim Dougherty first became supervisor and they put the irrigation,
Okay, so
they
19,
paused everything.
And they have to maintain a permit if it's grandfathered annually.
And then new systems you can only do it with cisterns.
mhm.
So, it would be my recommendation that you don't change any of that because I don't see us ever, in our lifetimes with the resource that is in Shelter Island, being able to allow people to just willy-nilly irrigate. I don't think that would be responsible.
Well, I think, Joe, one of the benefits of having you publicly state that is that there's no misconception on anybody's part that that the association wants to see water use or is not conservative about water use because it benefits you to it benefits to increase water use, obviously.
I have no interest in you to increase water sales or something like that. We're not pushing for that at all.
Okay.
I think if you got such a finite water supply, and then you have the whole issue of other people needing fresh, clean water, which still has to be addressed. Obviously, that's something that's on your minds all the time. But to allow irrigation and then to have people, using wells that are impacted by nitrates or other contaminants and not give them access to drinking water, I think that would be irresponsible. So I think that the way you do it right now is envious, actually. The average person in the West Neck Water District doesn't use a lot of water. They use a fraction of what's used on the mainland.
Because we pay for it exorbitantly.
And you pay exorbitantly for it, no question about that. Yep.
But it is a very good stopgap measure. Well, it's not a
Well, I
stop,
mean,
it's an ongoing measure.
I have to tell you, after being out here for 3 or 4 years, well, I should say we've been with Daring Harbor longer too. The people of Shelter Island have a much better awareness of the water that they consume. It's just a place where everybody thinks about it. And unfortunately, on the main body of the island, people are more concerned about their green lawns than they are about water conservation. And we have rates that step up, to make people that use more water pay more. But it's a little disconcerting when the rest of the country is, you always hear about water shortages and whatnot. we're stepping it up, and we're going to continue to step it up at the Water Authority, just by generating just more of an awareness on people's minds. I think this year, you know what, don't quote me on it, but we give out, one of the things that we promote is these, if you're going to have an irrigation system, these smart controllers, I don't know if you've seen them,
Yeah, yep.
where it's like, it's tied to the internet and it's looking at the weather, and it's actually not watering the next day if it knows that there's rain in the forecast. Those controllers save an awful lot of money. And they save an awful lot of water, I should say. And
Question, do you give rebates
We do,
for
yeah.
any kind of smart water devices?
we give rebates for those controllers. So if you put one of those controllers in, we give you a $150 rebate.
See, I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I'd send
I think
that
we
out
should
to
do that.
everybody.
We should do that around the island. Yeah, I
We should
think
do
that's,
that
I
around the
think the
island.
legislation that's being worked on
Yeah.
has considered that. But I think for
Yeah.
West Nile Water, I mean, I just was checking the legislation, so it would have been systems from pre-2005.
That would be
2005.
recommended for a system that's already grandfathered in and existing, that they add this to it to prevent watering in the rain.
Yes.
Yeah, right. That's the thing, right? That's upset. I've already seen it already in my neighborhood. We've had rainy days and I see people are watering in the rain. It drives us crazy when we see that kind of thing.
I guess it's like what incentives work for conservation. I mean, all you're able to do from, I'm surmising that all you can do is advise and educate and make people aware.
Right. Yeah, because
So
we don't have any enforcement capability.
Yeah,
We're not the police department.
yeah.
And we've spoke to many towns and we've tried very hard, and we're still doing it, to try to get towns to adopt ordinances, odd and even ordinances. That's something that we really would like to see taken up throughout the entire county. But there's always the question of enforcement.
Yeah.
And if you tell a town that now they have to enforce that, that becomes a big administrative burden for them to take that on. So there's always been some hesitancy to do that.
It's interesting that I think water was one of the number one concerns with the comprehensive plan discussion. But off this island, I don't think it ever is on anyone's radar in mid-island. They never even think about it. It's not even an issue as they see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, on the forks, it's much more well understood. But on the main body of the island, there's not a big, I should say awareness, but it's not as critical an issue for people.
But the water is also a lot cheaper in mid-island.
Mhm.
Well, it's the same price in Montauk as it is in Amityville. We don't have a different rate, maybe that's part of the issue, but we have uniform rates across our service territory, except in
We
places
have
where we
higher
have
rates.
surcharges, where you guys
Here,
have higher rates.
Our rate, it's like nothing in
In St.
mid-island.
James?
St. James, it was nothing.
Right,
Yeah.
and that doesn't do much to discourage.
No, not at all. Yeah, so.
Right.
everyone around us had automatic in-ground systems that went on.
Right. I look, it comes with affluence. People, parts of Long Island people have a lot of money, and they don't mind getting $1,000 or a $2,000 water bill. I can't imagine that, but that's not uncommon for some folks.
Oh.
But anyway, all we can do is try, and I can tell you that, over the time that I've been here at the Water Authority, we have really, really stepped it up. And those rebates, I think last year we gave out like $150,000 in rebates
Wow.
for those smart controllers. Yeah.
You put it in the bill, something that talks about it.
It should be on the bill. I know that we,
And how to get it.
yeah, it's on the website. If you go to the website, it'll show you right there. And we do rebate for other things also, other water saving devices, but that's the big one. That's the one that most people take advantage of.
Well, if there are no questions from, anybody have questions? Does the Zoom audience, anybody have any questions or comments before we close Joe's? No?
Informative as always.
Always. Thank you very much, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
we
seeing
always
you all.
learn. Yeah, and we look forward to our next meeting in, I believe it's August, and we look forward to
Okay, good.
6A.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have 2 new wells by then operating and things looking good. And we'll keep our fingers crossed that the perfluorinateds are not going to show up, but well, like I said, we'll have to see.
Well, I mean, I saw the analysis of the breakdown, and they're still indicative, they're still in quite high. They're above 4 for sure.
Yes, they are.
PFOs.
Right.
But, with the new wells that.
We'll see what
yeah,
happens.
We hope
But
that
you have
changes.
my assurance that if it's necessary to put filtration in there, we're going to do it. And we're going to do it well before it's required. And like
Yeah,
I
and
said,
my-
we're already looking at it.
I think my and members of the town water advisory committee's concern is not in the water quality of municipal water districts, but people who have well water and aren't necessarily testing for PFOs and PFOAs and then to mitigate that, the cost of mitigation.
Yeah.
So that's a big concern, just in general. So,
Well,
yeah.
and I mean, I don't know if you've been looking at the news, but there are several large projects that we've undertaken over the past year to extend water main out to areas, specifically right now in Manorville and Riverhead side and on the Brookhaven side. We've extended water main out to these areas where people have private wells and they're impacted by
Yeah.
perfluorinated compounds.
Right.
And we've done a lot of that. We're undertaking another big project very shortly, probably in another month. We're going to break ground in Riverhead to bring water to folks that are impacted by that. So
And West Hampton Beach, I believe you've just got a huge influx of money to take
there's a
care of
project
that
in West
sewer
Hampton,
front.
yep, down by Old Country Road in West Hampton, yep. And we've done a whole bunch. I mean, we did them down by Gabreski Airport because people on private wells were impacted there. Out at the town of East Hampton's airport to the south of them in Wainscott, they were impacted there. There were about 500 homes that we hooked up. So, so, if you have a private well, it should be tested.
Thanks, Barry.
You want to know what you're getting.
And Meg Larson's got a question?
Yeah, hi, Joe.
Hello, Meg.
I was seeing that Suffolk County has updated their irrigation laws to require smart technology for new irrigation systems. Do you think that's going to help you guys out at all with the excessive irrigation?
Yeah, so that's what we were talking about. Those are the smart controllers. That's what we provide rebates for. The word that I get from the industry is that they'll save approximately 30% on someone's normal irrigation, the amount of volume that they'll use. So they're absolutely a great idea. And those are what we're providing those rebates for. So yeah, I would recommend that anybody that put in a system would use those. And, over the long period of time, when everybody retrofits those, gets rid of their old dumb controllers and puts in smart controllers, I would hope that would make a big difference. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we're losing you again, Joe, so I think we're going to sign off.
Okay. All right. Well, it was good seeing you all.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye now. Have a nice weekend.
Take care.
Take care.
Well, if there are no questions from anybody, I'd like to move to adjourn this meeting. Any questions? No?
No.
But I guess you've already moved on, but quarterly billing spreadsheet, May 24. What,
I think that it will have to be,
Yeah, when we get it in another month.
oh, that's what we're going to get in the,
Yeah.
never mind, got it.
so in other words, our quarter.
No, I got it.
Yeah,
May 24th.
so our next meeting will take that up.
Should be. Okay.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay.
Then I conclude this meeting of the
Okay.
West Neck Water District. Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Good, short and sweet.